Ted, I think the question right now is how do you see the balance of the missiles and air defense systems, and how capable are they? How is the battlefield today? Because the latest news was, as we learned, that the United States is bringing the Patriot system and the THAAD system from South Korea to the Middle East.
Yeah.
What is happening? What is your
Well, both of those
understanding?
systems produce no missile defense capability, even when they're not crippled. I mean, the Patriots have. I have no way of knowing the intercept rates because everything I've seen from studying videos indicates that the Patriot intercept rate is very low, a few percent, maybe. So this doesn't make any difference. The THAAD system also has essentially no intercept capability, although it has other value, as I'll explain shortly. I should point out that given the trouble that the United States has caused for South Korea with the THAAD and the Patriot systems, because there's been a lot of trouble with China, who is very concerned about this buildup in South Korea. Given the trouble that the South Koreans, I can tell you, because I know a lot of South Koreans now, some of them at upper level government, they have to be furious that these systems are being taken away from them now, even if they know they're not capable. They have paid a very high price in their relationship with China, for these systems being foisted off on them by the Americans. And now the Americans are saying, okay, goodbye, we're taking them back. So, the political ramifications of the South Korean reaction to this are not yet being. You have to get a guy like Chaz Freeman on to talk about it, because although I have contacts with South Koreans, I don't have the political wisdom and breadth that a guy like Chaz has. But I can tell you, with my much more limited political understanding, the South Koreans have to be going absolutely ballistic over this transfer. Absolutely. So we have damaged our relationship with the South Koreans, even though it was not very good. I don't think the South Koreans have a lot of confidence that the United States is going to be behind them, whether or not we say it. And then we have the problem of the damage that the Iranians have done to the American military bases in the Persian Gulf, which have caused the Persian Gulf nations to step back and say, oh, do we really want these bases on our territory? So I won't be surprised if in 5 years those bases are gone. If, the political leadership in the Persian states, and not in the Persian Gulf states, starts to quietly press the Americans to pull out in the next, 5 years or even decade. So from an Iranian point of view, if this is an outcome, this is a great success, which we're already seeing the potential for. I won't say it's happening yet, but the potential for it. And a large part of this success has to do with the fantastic success of the drone campaign that the Iranian government had against the bases in the Persian Gulf, the American bases in the Persian Gulf. In particular, besides doing significant damage to the bases in general, the Iranian government has taken out all of the key radars that the United States and the Israelis need to at least know what kind of attacks are coming against Israel. And I'll explain that shortly. So right now, in Israel, they're being told, literally in the press, when the sirens go off, take shelter. In other words, we have no early warning beyond that. It used to be minutes and minutes, 5-10 minutes early warning. Now it's down to, sirens going off, probably, maybe a minute or two at most of warning for people to take shelter. And of course, the level of damage that's being inflicted is clearly high. We don't see a lot of it, but all you have to do is look at the sky over uh, uh, over Tel Aviv or Haifa, and see these missiles coming in, and the flashes from the explosions on the ground. And these missiles are very potent because a large number of the missiles we saw earlier, like in the June 25 12-day war, a lot of those missiles were older Iranian missiles, which were basically, the strategy, I think, was just throw them at the Israelis, see what happens, and they'll absorb some interceptors. You see a lot. For example, you see a lot of Patriot launches when there wasn't even targets that appeared to be. I can tell you what those launches are caused by. What happens is these ballistic missiles break up these are the older ones, not the new ones. The new ones go right to the ground and explode and do a lot of damage. But the older ones tend to tumble and they break up, and lots of falling debris. The Patriot system sees falling debris. It's an automated system. So it says, oh my goodness, incoming aircraft or incoming, hostile targets. And it starts launching interceptors. We saw this in the Gulf War of 1991. You'd see a ballistic missile come in, it would hit the ground and explode. In that war, it was Iraqi Scuds. Come to the ground, explode. And then you'd see a whole bunch of Patriots being launched. And we started scratching our heads and said, what can this possibly be? What's causing this? And then we started thinking about it, and we said we knew that significant numbers of Scuds were breaking up at high altitude because they were tumbling. When they hit the atmosphere and they're in an unfavorable position, they just break up. And we started calculating the fall rates, and we said, oh my goodness, what this system is shooting at is the falling debris. So I suspect that's still going on. And these intercept rates have been very low. I mean, the fact that these radars are now no longer playing a role and that the system is theoretically non-functioning. I mean, in other words, before it was theoretically functioning, but the effectiveness was very low, maybe a few percent. So in practical terms, I don't think this changes much, but in psychological terms, I think this changes quite a bit. So why don't can you put on this slide number 4, maybe? Let me explain what slide number 4 just is showing you the basic functional architecture of a missile defense. It could be any missile defense. So in the right center, you see something labeled an early warning radars. Now, the early warning radar is a giant radar, and I'll show you a picture of one of these things. This is the giant radar that was destroyed. I don't know where it was now. Is it Qatar? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was in Qatar. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is what's called a UHF, ultra high frequency radar. I actually know a lot about this radar because it's an early warning radar used for the protection of the United States. We have 4 of them, or 5 of them operating in the United States, and one in England too, actually. And this radar operates at a certain frequency. The frequency is important because it's chosen so that a warhead will be a very efficient reflector of radio signal, of radar. So the radar reflectivity of a typical warhead at UHF frequencies might be 1 square meter. So think of a square meter of reflector, and that's a significant reflector. But that's at UHF. That's at the right frequency. Now, if we look to the left of that radar, where we have the connecting communication lines, you have smaller radars, and those smaller radars, their job is to acquire incoming warheads with much greater tracking precision than the low frequency big radar can achieve. And so they operate at much higher frequencies. That would be, in this case, the THAAD radar, which operates at about 10 gigahertz. One is operating at 10 gigahertz, the other is operating at 0.4 or 0.5 gigahertz. So this is 20 times higher frequency. Well, at this higher frequency, the radio reflection from the warhead is 1,000 times smaller, 100 or 1,000 times smaller. In other words, the cross section, instead of being 1 square meter, because of the high frequency, is actually 1/100th or 1,000th of a square meter. So no matter how powerful this radar, the smaller radar is, it has a much more difficult time acquiring the incoming warhead. So it needs cueing information from the big radar. So the big radar gives the cueing information to the smaller, higher frequency tracking radars, which can then track the incoming target and then guide interceptors to try to make intercepts. So these radars, these high frequency radars, X-band radars, cannot acquire the incoming warheads unless they have this cueing information. Because let me just quickly point out that the way to think of a radar is think of it as like a flashlight. So I have this flashlight and I'm pointing it. Now, there's an incoming object. Now, I don't know where it is exactly, so I have to, raster through the sky looking for this incoming object until I see it. So that's a search phase. That's search and acquisition, it's called. That takes a tremendous amount of time because I'm looking into different points in space and I have to dwell long enough that if the object is there, I'll see it. I can't just sweep across. So it takes a long effort. So if I can compress the location, I get cueing information, then that radar can focus on the area of sky where the incoming object is and acquire it much more easily. And without that cueing information, it may not be able to acquire it at all, acquire the targets at all. So if you lose that big surveillance radar, which we lost, the West lost it, all of a sudden your THAAD radars can't acquire targets. So these THAAD radars are having a hellish time. They're almost non-functioning. So now that's not just the THAAD radar. Let's go to slide 6. You have these surface ships, and the surface ships, they're supposed to be launching ballistic missiles against, interceptors against incoming, supposedly the ships off the coast, Aegis cruisers off the coast. And those Aegis cruisers are supposedly launching SM-6 and SM-3 interceptors at these incoming warheads, helping to protect Israel. Well, I doubt that that's going on because the interceptors are much too slow if the ships are standing at a safe distance off Israel, and it's very doubtful that they would be able to acquire the incoming warheads early enough. However, the only way they could acquire the warheads is if you had like a THAAD radar passing the information to the Aegis ship, which has even a weaker radar, so that it can acquire the warheads at this greater range. So So if you look at this diagram, you see this in the bottom center, it's labeled a remote sensor. That's a THAAD radar. And the THAAD radar, which obtains cueing information from either a satellite, I'll talk about the satellites also briefly, or in the case of the Persian Gulf, from this big radar that's now been destroyed. So the THAAD radar can't get cueing information from the big radar. And the THAAD radar, even if it had the cueing information, passes this information to the ship, and the ship is unable to use its radar to acquire the incoming warhead. So this is a whole mess. And I should point out, I've been talking about this for a decade or more. This is all coming home to roost. All the hens are coming home to roost. This is all falling apart because every decision was made because of politics, not technical reasoning. And so why do we have these pathetic Aegis ships, which cost a fortune and can do nothing in terms of missile defense? We have them because Ellen Tauscher, this woman who was on the House Armed Services Committee, she liked ship-based missile defense. She knew nothing about it, I can tell you, because I had the unpleasant experience of trying to deal with Ellen Tauscher, who would tell you what a great, how much money she made, the first time you meet her. And she was, prominent in the Democratic Party. And that's what led to the September 2009 Obama decision to the Navy, to start the Navy Aegis missile defense system. It was her. It wasn't a serious technical analysis. It was this woman, this fraud. But, she had a lot of ego. And the first time I met her, I was hoping for a friendly meeting. She came into the room and my eyelashes were singed the moment she opened her mouth. The most discourteous person I ever dealt with. She actually accused me of working for the Russians. I guess, unfortunately, I didn't wish her ill, but she died. I'm sure if she were still around, she'd accuse me of working for the Iranians now. But this really unpleasant person with her contribution was going to be this system. She didn't care whether it worked or not. This was her baby. And anybody who raised questions, honest technical questions that could be backed up with technical analysis, was a threat. And from the first second she laid eyes on me, I was singed. She just let me have it. And, it's okay with me. I'm not afraid of her. I wasn't afraid of her then, But this is how a monumental decision was made by the Obama administration because of this person who was in the Congress with a lot of ego, no technical understanding of any kind, but she had this pet rock that she wanted to push. And the Obama administration, because they're all politically motivated, they don't ask anybody about, is this a good idea? So they adopt it. Obama talks about this system. You should see his 2009 statement. It's a joke. This is a new system. It's got new concepts and blah. It's a new pyramid. It has no capability at all. The guy is talking nonsense. So here you see the Democratic role, and of course, this system then was injected into Europe as the Aegis ashore. They put versions of this in Romania and Poland, which were unambiguously aimed at Russia. Anybody could see that. And they said it was, of course, aimed at Iran because this was to defend the United States, because these ICBMs, which we have still not seen from Iran, would be launched from Iran against the United States. They would tend to fly over the poles, so they'd fly over Russia. So we'd launch these interceptors at them and shoot them down. Never mind, the interceptors didn't have enough speed to get to their targets, and the radars were not adequate. And we had this plan. So if you're sitting there in Russia and you're a technical person and you're advising Vladimir Putin, who is a very serious guy, I mean, you can see when Putin talks that he is talking to his technical analysts. He's not talking to some political staff person who, I mean, he has obviously political staff, but you can see that he has a serious understanding of how these systems function or not from statements he makes. So you get Putin and his technical people say, well, you know, this system can't do the job, but it can launch sea-launched cruise missiles, incidentally, which can be used to attack Russia. And so then the Russians start saying, you know, this system doesn't look like it's aimed at missile defense. It looks like it's aimed at adding firepower against Moscow, short warning attack firepower. And the Americans say, oh, no, you're wrong. And the 2009 Russian reset, which people like Mike McFaul and Rose Gadamuller, I'm using their names intentionally for those who they say, well, it was because Putin, you know, he was a difficult person. It's all on Putin. Well, it's on them. It's on Gadamuller and McFaul because they didn't do their homework. And I can tell you for a fact, I've talked to both of them. I know both of them. Neither of them have any idea that these systems have no capability. McFaul actually tried to ask me about it at one point, and I just started calmly explaining it to him, and he just ran away because he didn't want to be exposed for how little he knew. And so these people were pushing this, and McFaul is telling the Russians, you know, it's no problem. You know, you shouldn't be worried. And they have this Russian reset going on, and the Russians are saying these guys are trying to lull us into a situation where they can attack us, which incidentally looks like history is true. So the Russian reset failed because of Hillary Clinton, Rose Gadamuller, Mike McFaul, and Ellen Tauscher. You know, all of these wonderful, deep-thinking people who they're not to blame for it. It's the Russians. The Russians are, you know, they just, you know, this guy Putin is such a bad guy. He's such an evil person. Well, the fact of the matter is they're total illiterates. That's the good way of describing them. In fact, they're worse because they could have known and should have known. And so they're lying total illiterates. And that's how the Russian reset failed. I'm sorry to get into this history, but I think this is a relevant thing. So anyway, let's go to slide 7, and I'll just show you. So if you look at this diagram, you can see I've labeled the Aegis radar antenna. Without going into any detail, the capability of the radar depends on 3 important parameters. It depends on the size of the antenna, the power radiated from the antenna, and the radar cross-section of the target it's trying to observe. So if the antenna is bigger, it can collect more reflected signal. So that's where the size of the antenna is important. Obviously, if it's more powerful, if the search beam is more intense, it can see a dimmer object. And if the object is very dim, very poor reflector, or very good reflector, it can see it at greater range or not. So that's why, so the power aperture product is the term that is typically used by engineers, but it's really the power aperture radar cross-section product. Notice that this radar is really rather small. It's extremely powerful if you're using it against aircraft, because the aircraft radar cross-section is 100 times bigger than, or 1,000 times bigger than an incoming warhead at far range. So if you want to see an airplane, you want to deal with at tens of kilometers range. So if you want to use this radar for air defense against incoming attacking aircraft or cruise missiles and things, this is a fantastically capable radar. If you want to use it against ballistic warheads, it's useless. It's just not up to the job. If we go to slide 8, we have another radar here. This is the THAAD radar. There were at least 4 of these radars that were being operated in the Middle East, trying to, and those radars were cued by, let's go to slide 9 and we'll go back. We're cued, if you look at this big radar on the left, this big pyramid-like radar, that is the radar, that's a radar design, that is the one that was destroyed in Qatar. That was the this is, it's, notice the diameter of the radar is 30 meters. It's got like a 750 square meter antenna size. Remember, antenna size is important. A bigger antenna, because the power, it tends to be proportional to the size of the area because of the design of the antenna. It's what's called the phased array. So the fact that it's bigger also means it has more power. So this power aperture product of this radar is fantastic relative to the little radar, which was shown on the slide earlier, which is shown as an inset below here. So yeah, there it is, but let's go back to 9. And we see it to scale next to, it's called the FBX. I'm sorry for all the terminology changing. These slides are taken from years of slides. And that's what the THAAD radar looks like physically relative to the size of the AN-132 radar that was destroyed in Qatar. So you can see, I've only taught qualitatively, but it's all backed up by calculations, that the system is no longer able to see these incoming warheads and track them. And as a result, not only can it not launch interceptors, which could be important if in fact the intercept rate was high, but the intercept rate has been near 0 anyway. So that hasn't changed the intercept rate, but it has changed the early warning situation, because the radars, if you're in Tel Aviv and the attack is coming into Tel Aviv, not Haifa, I can alert Tel Aviv, and so people can take shelter. I don't want to alert Haifa and Beersheba and these other places, because I don't want people to be disrupted by these alerts and not have the attack come in. So I've lost my ability to localize where the attack is coming. I can tell an attack is coming because I can see the launch with my satellites, but I can't track the systems. So let me just quickly show you what we have in space, because that's working. So but the space-based system, which has fantastic capabilities that are great, remember, knowing something is always better than knowing nothing. So the system is very limited, but very capable in giving you some information. And we can tell if there is a missile launched in Iran, we can see it. In fact, we can probably see the exhaust plumes from the drones when they are launched. We would see it with the satellite, because the satellite's so capable. Because each of the drones have little rocket motors underneath them when they're first launched, even though just to get them up to speed. And we can see those. It doesn't tell us where they're going because those burn only a few seconds. We have no track information of any kind. It's like someone lighting, it's a dark night and someone lights a cigarette in a moonless night, and you see from a few kilometers away that there's a little bit of light, and then it snuffs out. If they're coming at you, you don't know what path they're going to take, or you don't even know if they're coming at you or going somewhere else. So it tells you there's something out there and something happened, but doesn't help you. Now, in the case of Israel, they can tell what kind of missile they're seeing because the rocket emits a certain amount of power. It has a flight path, so it's bending over. The plume has a certain length, and as the plume of the rocket, you're looking from space, you see more and more of the plume geometrically. You can see a change in the profile of the brightness. So it's, that's an alpha tau. Oh, that's something else, and so on. So you can tell, but it doesn't. It's of some use, but you don't know really where it's going. You don't know if it's going to land in Haifa or Tel Aviv. So you have that information. Just to show you diagrammatically what the satellite looks like. Let's go to slide 11.